right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, and there he is. Frankie Corrado himself. What's happening, Frankie? How are we feeling? A beautiful Wednesday afternoon here in Toronto.
There's a few things that have happened today. I don't know if you've noticed, but I have my gold chain on.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Yes. Are you an agent for quarterbacks in the NFL? Like, is that a side gig that you're trying to establish or what?
That's not my side gig, but I may have recently employed my good buddy Tommy DeVito on my own fantasy team, and I didn't want to have to go down that road, but I was put in a tough spot because I have Justin Herbert, and he's out. And I took a look at the waiver wire today, and I saw Mitch Trubisky, Zach Wilson, and Tommy DeVito, and I threw on my gold chain. I undid an extra button, and I said, I'm rolling with Tommy DeVito.
I love that idea, man. Tommy Cutlets, they're down in New Orleans this week. I can't believe I know that, but I'm actually tracking the Giants now, right? Like, they're an interesting story because I love this guy's story, and that can win you a pool at the end of the season. You get really creative on the waiver wire. I remember I did that a few years ago, picked up Ryan Fitzpatrick late in the season. And remember, he went on that insane heater. I think he was in Miami at the time, was putting up like astronomical Peyton Manning in his prime type statistics. And I grabbed them and I was playing them, and it led me to the promised land. And the crazy thing is, Tommy DeVito, I keep calling him Danny. Now I have to stop myself. Yeah, I'm like, it's Tommy DeVito. It's not Danny DeVito. It was announced today he was the NFC Player of the Week. I thought he played well. I didn't think he was that good, but still, NFC Player of the Week. And Zach Wilson was the AFC Player of the Week.
Buddy, I saw that tweet, and you know how we just got fooled by the whole Ohtani thing? Like, I had to click on the profile and do a forensic audit to make sure, like, that was a real tweet, but it was.
I did the same thing. It was Schefter. I'm like, this has got to be a parody account. It can't be. And then says something about, like, Twitter and how often people get duped, myself included, that you legitimately have to do that forensic audit. You have to click on it, make sure of it, especially if you're going to bring it to the air. Like, we're barely into the show, and we're referencing something that I think a week ago, the whole world would have said that's a parody account. Like, you got duped. There's no way that's actually factual. And yet the Giants and the Jets are coming off big wins, and they're feeling good moving forward. And they're going to be involved in the pursuit of they're probably neither team's going to make the playoffs. The Giants are 5-8. They're still technically in the hunt. It's not going to happen. There's like 5 teams that are 6-7. I don't think the Giants will get there. But again, they're in New Orleans. That's a spoiler. The Saints are playing for the South. Like, someone's got to win the NFC South. And the Jets are playing games against big boys in the AFC East and the AFC. Like, they have a real chance to be a spoiler, right?
I can't get over the agent, man. The agent on the sidelines with the hat on and the phone calls. Like, that is a fake phone call if I've ever seen one. There is no one on the receiving end of that call.
I
will
agree.
Die on that hill. He's not on the phone with anyone.
There's no way. It was a complete fake. He was trying to make it out as if he was talking to, like, Gatorade or Nike.
Dude, like, this guy's pulling 6-figure side deals for the guy, and he's going to take a 15% cut, and he's looking at Tommy. He's going, Tommy, I'm going to go 15 on this one. You okay with that? Like,
right. Are they watching me? Do they have the cameras on? All right, you're on ESPN. Go. Pretend you're talking to somebody.
Yeah.
There's just no way that was legitimate. Yet, NFC Player of the Week, AFC Player of the Week, and possible savior for your
and he's on my team. I'm going
team.
up against Leuenberg, and he's got a juggernaut going, and no one's on the waiver wire more than him. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I got the gold chain on, as you know. Was at my house recently. I had the white tracksuit, the gold chain, so I had to show people the gold chain.
I love it, man. You know what? That's like an Auston Matthews type look too, right now, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You talk about the city of New York. The best team in the city of New York over the last 48 hours. Was the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? It was not the Rangers or the Knicks or the Nets or the Jets or the Giants. I don't care what the Yankees are doing or the Mets in the offseason. The Maple Leafs rolled through there on a back-to-back, albeit they lost the first game against New York, the Islanders, but I thought they played pretty well that night. And they've got an illness coursing through their team. They're on their third-string goaltender. They've got a patchwork defense going, and all they do is accumulate wins, and I think they're really chugging. Like, last night was incredibly impressive in that building against that team. Everything I just referenced, you played the night before. You've got an illness coursing through the team. You got Martin Jones making his first official start of the season. They put a 4-1 spot on the board in the first and then close it in the third with style. They have now accumulated points in 12 of their last 13 games. They're 9-1-3 in their last 13 games. I think they're the hottest team in the league. If it's not them, it's Edmonton. Maybe the Islanders. The Islanders have been really good. But 9-1-3 in your last 13 games. And I understand the focus on, who's Lajoie and what's he doing? Who's this Benoit? Who's Lagesson? When did Martin Jones become a Maple Leaf? I understand if you're not tracking it daily. I'm sure guys like you and I were getting texts like that all the time. Like, who's this guy? What's he bringing to the table?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, this team during the regular season is a professional hockey club. Like, during the regular season, they are a veteran team with star power. And when the stars decide to show up, like they have recently, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get dominant performances. And I thought the Leafs were outstanding last night.
I'm right there with you. And you go back to Saturday's game against Nashville at home. That was, and Sheldon Keefe said this as well, as complete of a game that they've played all season long. And Nashville had been playing pretty good. I think they were 8-2 in their last 10 coming into that game. They actually went the next night in Montreal and beat the wheels off them. So like they're playing good hockey. And so the D looks really good that night. The patchwork D that you talked about looks good that night. As far as the Islanders game go, there's probably 10 minutes in that game where you think, oh man, is this going to start to catch up to these guys? Are they a little bit out of their depth? Like, can they deal with, the NHL forecheck, those heavy guys night in, night out? Maybe it's going to catch up to them. They find a way to right the ship in that game. I give them a lot of credit. Like, that was a resilient effort for all the guys that played in that game on the island. And then you go to MSG against the Rangers, one of the best teams in the league, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, high tempo, in your face kind of team. And not for a second in that game did it ever feel like it was slipping away or it was too much for those guys to handle. So there's a few things. I think you got to give Treliving some credit because he's assembled the depth of the blue line. How many times in the past, Hayes, was it like, we got an injury, so we're just, we're going to lose, or it's going to be tough. We got an injury. Last year, there was, they weathered the storm. That was great. But, the D, Treliving's assembled it. The players, to their credit, have played really well, and I think Sheldon Keefe deserves some credit because he hasn't put those guys in positions that he can't handle, which is tough to do because there's 3 or 4 of those guys in the lineup on any given night.
Yeah, exactly. Sheldon Keefe, listen, during the regular season, the guy, I believe, has a better winning percentage than anyone in the history of the game. So, like, is he a perfect coach? No. Are they a perfect team? No. But guess what? You're not going to get that in a 32-team league. Like, I think there's some perspective that needs to be applied here because with the Leafs, I think it's natural. Every fan base does this. You focus on your team and your team solely. You watch your team. You're obsessed with your team. You know everything about all the players, the details, their history. You project what their future is going to be. But in the NHL, there really are 2 different seasons, effectively. There's the regular season and the way the game's played and the way it affects every team in the league. And then there's the playoffs. And I got into this discussion yesterday with Andy and Feschuk, where I understand I'm not going to blame any Leaf fan for constantly having your eye on the ball, and the ball represents the playoffs. I totally get that. I understand it. I'm a lot of times in the same boat as you, thinking that way, thinking, how is this going to project? But you can't play playoff games in December. And what you do through 82 games is about punching a ticket and then getting there. And the way the regular season generally works in the cap era with a 32-team watered-down league is every team is dealing with this. Every team has depth issues. Every team has injuries. Every team is dealing with a weird schedule or illness going through. Or you got the dads on the trip. There's all these different variables in play. And as a result, again, I think you look at the Leafs, and the Leafs take heat because it's like, wow, this wasn't perfect, or that wasn't, or you're not like Boston, or look at what Vegas is doing. And sure, they could be more consistent. Ideally, you'd chase a President's Trophy and have a completely unique season. That would be awesome. Rack up 130 points, do something historic. I'd be all for that. I'd love to see it. But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of griping, a lot of concern, a lot of pessimism, and yet again, they have points in 12 of 13. They're 9-1-3.
Yeah.
And they're on the heels of the Bruins. And, like, Florida's been a great story this year. They're a point back with 2 games in hand. Like, the Leafs are one of the 5 or 7 best teams in the league right now. And is it perfect? No. Do I think the way they're built is going to work come playoff time? No. I think that's where, again, it's a different story. Like by the end of the year, you got to have your details down. That's where you rely on depth. That's where I think size and physicality and the ice shrinking comes into play. But during the regular season, it's free-flowing. A lot of it is, who are your best players? Are they better than the opponents? Do you have a system in place that you can rely on? And, where are your special teams at? And that's where the Leafs are
and the schedule,
really working
Hayes.
right now.
Like, think about the schedule in an 82-game season. You're catching teams that are playing 4-6, 3-4, back-to-backs. Guys are banged up. So if your schedule aligns a certain way, you can rack up some wins against some really good teams. But you get into the playoffs, everyone's ready. It's a 7-game series. But, and we always have this conversation, I feel like. If you want to take the regular season for granted and say, I'll see you in the playoffs, that's fine. That's your prerogative. How's that going for the Carolina Hurricanes right now? How's that going for the Tampa Bay Lightning? Like, there's some teams that you kind of think are shoo-ins to make the playoffs, and they're struggling right now. So I think you still have to kind of put some stock into the regular season as far as how the team is playing and, the kind of resilience that they do have over the course of the season. But I don't disagree with you. Like, at some point, we're going to see some changes to the team, and it's going to be a little more tailor-made to the playoffs. But for the time being, man, it's okay to say that the skilled guys have been really resilient. They've found ways to score goals, different ways to score goals. Like Matthews and Nylander off the rush adds a different kind of element, a different kind of punch than Matthews and Marner. And I know last night Matthews-Marner connect for that goal, and that's great. But just from watching the way these lines have kind of grown here the last little bit, it's like the Matthews-Nylander line has created a little more separation from the second line. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I think that's another element to their team where now it doesn't feel like they have to play with the puck in the offensive zone for a long period of time in order to generate something. It's like, that's that game breaker mentality where you're heading down the ice on a 3-on-2. Those guys can score from distance, make something happen. And it's dangerous, man. It's like bonus goals for them.
Yeah. And like Matthews is really chugging now. And when we did the OverDrive panel a couple of weeks ago, at that point, we were going into the game, and I think they had won 5 of their last 6, at that point. Yet, again, it was ugly at times. The wins in regulation was a big topic. It continues to be, although you look at it recently, now they're starting to win some games in regulation. I think 3 of their last 4, Ottawa, Nashville, and last night against the Rangers. So now you're starting to put together not only wins in reg, but you're blowing out teams, right? They blew out Nashville. They blew out the Rangers last night. But a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the panel, I was talking about how even though they're winning, I think the perception is that it isn't as dominant as it could be. And that was because the big boy wasn't chugging and he wasn't contributing. Like Matthews really went through a dead period of like 8 to 10 games where he did not contribute, and he was blending into games. That was the term I used. He was blending into games. Marner was in a very similar situation, and now all of a sudden he snapped out of it. I think it dates back to a couple of weeks, but certainly the Bruins game a week and a half ago, where he was unreal that night. I thought he was outstanding on Long Island. He was great last night. Marner's starting to chip in and contribute. He had that hat trick the night we were doing the panel against Seattle. Since then, he's pumping in, points, and it has a different feel. And ultimately, it's going to be, I believe, more susceptible to being, having longevity and having success long term. Is if your big boys, are playing at the highest level, then everything filters down from there.
For
right?
Sure.
It's when Matthews is chugging, this team feels different. When Marner is capable of driving a line, which he is, and he's actually following through on that, and it's not just living off the power play or special teams, it feels different because then it filters through. Then you look at Max Domi, you're like, man, I liked this game last night. He played 10 minutes. Like
Yarncroke. There's your guy right
exactly.
there. Like that,
there's a
third
chip
line.
in, nice play. But you can't be going into a game consistently thinking, man, Yarncroke and Max, they better really drive this thing. It's got to be the big boys, and it has been recently. And as a result, I think that's what has separated overtime wins with a 4-0 win, with a 7-3 win. When the big boys decide we're here to play, there's not many guys in the league that are better. and they can take over a game.
And you can put everything this season under a microscope and do the old forensic audit like we talked about. But at the end of the day, you look at the big picture, they're just under a 700 winning percentage. It's like a 675 winning percentage. And their number one goaltender is a rookie who's injured. So now they're relying on a guy in Samsonov who hasn't played well this season and Martin Jones who's been playing in the AHL. They've got a patchwork blue line with 3 guys called up from the AHL. Yes, they have the star players, but depth scoring, like the fourth line has been an issue, although David Kampf has been really good lately. Like, he's really picked up his game. What I'm trying to say is, like, there's a number of things that you could point to this season if they were a 80 winning percentage and say, well, that's the reason why. And I don't know how they're going to, get their way out of this unless the star players score the goals. The star players are scoring the goals. They're playing really, really well. And now everyone's contributing. And all those issues that the team has on paper or to the naked eye, they just don't matter because you're a 675 winning percentage. They're third place in their division and they're knocking on the door as far as being first or second place. So I don't know, like things are going really well for this team and those guys deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah. Like again, all of a sudden they're 4 points back of Boston. Like you could pass them by the new year if you keep chugging. Now the Bruins, they're going to keep chugging too. And, the Leafs are going to hit a rut in the road again at some point. Every team does it. Again, in a 32-team, watered-down, parity-type regular season, you're going to have ups and downs. The Leafs will have another down, and it's on them to dig themselves out of it. But why I think you should have faith that they will during the regular season is because they've always been comfortable during the regular season. And a lot of times in the regular season, it is, who are your 4 or 5 best forwards? Who are your 2 or 3 best defensemen? And is your goalie competent? Right. And there's different variations of it. Your coach is going to factor in. Do you have a great goalie? Do you have special teams? Like there are different variables that come into play, of course. But I think you mentioned the defense. And again, it's so easy to focus on what is Lagesson doing? What's Timmins doing? Lajoie, Benoit, whoever it happens to be. Yet I think, we're bearing the lead a little bit because their 3 veteran guys and their 3 most important players are Riley, Brody, and McCabe. And they've all been healthy, and they're all playing. And I think they're playing well. Morgan Riley has been outstanding. Like 100%. He has been outstanding this year. I thought he was great again last night and the night before in New York. And, again, that allows Sheldon Keefe and the coaching staff to ease in, puck drop in the offensive zone, sneak Timmins out there, sneak Lajoie out there, find the fourth line matchup, whatever, because you feel really good about Riley, Brody, McCabe, who he's playing with right now, and that goes a long way as well. It's a top-heavy league, and then once you get to the playoffs, that's when the depth has got to be there, and that will be a challenge, and that will be waiting for them. But during the regular season, it's a different league. It's a different sport.
Well, and think about that, Hayes. You just mentioned Riley, Brody, McCabe, and how thin those guys are stretched out now because of what they have to do. Like, you can't put the other 3 guys that are in the lineup on any given night, Lagesson, Timmins, Benoit, Lajoie, whoever's in, like, you can't put those guys in situations where they're going to get eaten up. And trust me, it's very easy as a guy who's a tweener to get put in a spot. You're halfway through the game, and you're like, man, I've been playing pretty good. Like, I like this. And then you get out there against a first line for the other team, and you're like, well, there's a backdoor tap.
I don't like this.
And now you're like, oh, man, okay, so that's -1. Like, I got to go back to the bench. I got to pick this up. And so those guys, like, they're dealing with that. And at the same time, it's like Riley, Brody, McCabe, those guys are stretched thin because now they got to do a lot more. And it's not just for one game, Hayes. Like, that's the thing. It's not one night they've got to do that. They've got to do that every single night now until the reinforcements come. And the injured guys doesn't sound like they're very close. It seems like it's, there's no trade imminent. So those guys are doing that for the foreseeable future. That's a big job they got to do, and they're doing a great job. And Jake McCabe's improved his play with the puck big time. That
was what was necessary. It was so shaky early in the year. Like, really. And he had the injuries, and, like, there were kind of ins and outs. His camp wasn't great. Really made some poor decisions with the puck. But you're right. He's slowed that down. He's playing physically. That great hit on Lindgren last night.
Great hit. Like, textbook hit, man.
Great hit. And I love that, like, Zibanejad started dusting up, and his gloves, and, like, McCabe's like, my gloves are coming off. Like, I'm not going to let you just think you're going to come over here and hug. If you want to fight, we'll fight. And at that point, it was 5-3, and that allowed the Leafs to basically closed the door. Like that ended the crowd. It ended the night. And that's what kind of, mojo can come with a play like that, physicality like that. And you mentioned, the fact that trades aren't coming. I think that's an important component here that's really been beneficial to the club, is that I was adamant, 3 weeks ago that they had to do something. 2 weeks ago, when Liljegren went down, Klingberg was out, Giordano was out, it was like, man, this seems like a panic-inducing moment where maybe you have to overpay. And the front office, to their credit, did not do that. They stood pat. They obviously had deals they could have made. I'm sure they could have made the Zadorov deal. They would have had to pay more. I'm sure they could have acquired other guys throughout the league. They would have had to pay more. And what this 13-game run, where they're 9-1-3, what it's allowed them to do is breathe and probably negotiate, not necessarily from a position of strength, but a position of equality. Right now, you don't have to call and say our season's on the line. We need to do something, because your season has basically, it's almost propped up since these injuries have taken place.
Yeah,
they're playing better and they're winning more since the injuries hit.
Listen, if they made the trades, it wouldn't have hurt them. Like they would have had good players, but and you know what happens? So Wall goes out. Obviously, the defensemen are hurt, but I think the moment that Wall goes out, it's coming off that Thursday game in Ottawa where it's breakaway, 2-on-1, a lot of defensive mistakes, and now your number one guy is out. And no one's going to say anything about this because there's other players in the room. Like, you have to be mindful of that. But I think there's an understanding within the group that it's like, we can't play like that anymore. Who are we kidding? And now we don't even have the guy that's going to bail us out like he has so many times this season. So, like, we better button it up defensively and play to our structure and have a little urgency away from the puck. I just think that's like an internal understanding that a lot of those guys have had, and that's growth in the league. Like, these guys have been around a long time. They've seen a lot. They should have learned a lot by now, and it's hard not to think that the guys had that awareness, because the contrast from Thursday's game in Ottawa to Saturday's game at home in Nashville and what they continued into New York on the Father's trip,
night and day.
Big difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. That Ottawa game, they did not play well. They had a horrible start. I thought they got better as the game went on, but they were awful in the first. And Wall was the only reason the game was close. And his injury, it may have sparked something, right? Obviously not on purpose, but subconsciously, you're probably right. It's like, guys, we gotta smarten up here. So that was a big win last night. Matthews is up to 21 goals on the season. Brock Boeser had 2 though again last night.
The Brock star.
He's up to 20. Like, he's
good
right
for him.
there. It's such a great story.
I'm happy for that kid, man.
Well, when he came into the league, we were talking about him as like the next Brett Hull, Ovi, like he had swagger, he had the mullet, he was ripping home shots. Like, he was a guy. I remember when they came into town, I went to see him play.
Yeah.
And it was like Laine's rookie year. I'm like, they're only here once. McDavid, like, not to that extent, but not far off. I'm like, I got to go see this guy play. Like, people are buzzing about Boeser. And, then he's had injuries. He's had stuff go on in his personal life. And really, he was written off. Like, collectively, I think
they were trying to get rid of him last year, Hayes. They would have moved him for the right price last year, and I don't think anyone was willing to swallow the money on that. But good for him. He has a hat trick last night, and I remember his first year in the league, he put up a 3-spot on us at home in Vancouver. I was playing for Pittsburgh, and after the game, our goaltender said it was a lucky hat trick, and that kind of set off the Vancouver media. Yeah, the Vancouver fans didn't like that one, but
nor should they. Like, what a donkey comment! It was that's a lucky hat trick.
And he doesn't have he doesn't have that like goal scoring like Matthews, where it's like really electric. But what he is he's a smart player, and he gets himself around the ice, and in the right spaces at the right times, and he'll lean on one, man. He'll go knee down, lean on one, and then go, look at this, look at that.
Look at this, look at that. That's okay. We got to play this clip because I've had it in the chamber since Monday, and there's no reason why we haven't played it. It's gone viral. It's everywhere. If you haven't missed it, you're in for an absolute treat here, because now it's popping into my mind when I'm like that first Matthews goal last night, where I think it was the first one. Was that where Willie broke in and then hit him? And then obviously Matthews, he did not go roof daddy on that. He could have gone roof daddy. He did on the second one, though. So there's kind of a mashup, because the first one, the way it was set up And the way that Willie, broke into the zone kind of made me feel like, all right, that's the beginning of one of the great play-by-play
You want the
calls of all
perfect
time.
one? You want the perfect one? The Bedard
Yes.
goal from last night.
Okay, that probably is, right?
That's the perfect one.
He kind of splits the D. That goal he scored was unreal. For him to shift the puck the way he did and get it up and go shelf. So it kind of was like the Bedard goal last night. Here it is up on TSN4 where he does split the D. He goes roof daddy.
Roof daddy.
So picture that goal with this audio. Play it, boys, and let's introduce this to the OverDrive crowd.
Joey Bielik has it. He turns back. Looks like they're doing a little reverse that you might see in football. And here comes Boeser. He's got some speed. Split the D. Oh, what's he going to do? He's shooting a roof daddy. Oh, look at that. Look at this. Look at that.
Look at this. Look at that.
I have watched that clip 40,000 times in the last 2 days. Where, it's the greatest clip where he goes, roof daddy, look at that, look at this, look at that. We got to clip that, JP, and that's a drop for the rest of time.
Something happens to the guy's voice there where he goes to, another dimension. You know what that is, man? That's one of those Canadian heritage moments.
Yes.
Remember those commercials with the nice logo? That's a Canadian heritage moment. Can we just get it one more time?
Yeah, roll it one more time. It's from the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. Here it is.
Back. Looks like they're doing a little reverse that you might see in football. And here comes Boeser. He's got some speed. Split the D. Oh, what's he going to do? He's shooting a roof daddy. Oh, look at that. Look at this. Look at that.
Look at this. Look at that. When he goes split the D, too, he's speaking gibberish there for a bit. Yeah. And then he's like, hey, a little, you see this, that in football. And then all of a sudden, because you're right, he's like monotone early. Kind of baritone a little bit, like a bit of a deeper voice, and then the guy just explodes. Roof daddy, look at this, look at this, look at that.
Look at this, look at that. That might be like the new Boom Goes the Dynamite.
Oh, it is.
Look at this, look at that.
That is the modern Boom Goes the Dynamite. That's such a ridiculously awesome call.
It's so good.
The camera, there's actually a pretty good crowd out there. Yeah. I would guess, again, that's provincial junior. It's, I don't know, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids.
Yeah, that'd be like
scouts.
the Buzzers. Be like playing against the St. Mike's Buzzers.
Yeah, exactly. And that would be it. There'd be some, grade 11 kid. I don't know if that's a kid or not. I couldn't tell. You think that's an adult? Was that an adult
I think it's
or a
like
kid?
an early 20s guy who's just for the boys. He might even have a fat lip,
right. He's working his way
into a bottle.
I could see that.
He's got things going on up there.
Yes,
look at that. Look at this, look at that.
It's just one of the great calls of all time. Step aside. Yeah. Bob Cole, Danny Gallivan, the
Foster
Hewitt.
golden goal, CC, golden
exactly.
goal, right next to it.
Can you believe it? Exactly.
Where were you when you heard? Look at this, look at that.
Look at that. Look at this, look at that.
I'll be so disappointed if Gord Miller doesn't implement that into a call. The World Juniors are right around the corner. We're a couple of weeks away from the juniors, and if someone does something amazing, he needs to drop. Look at this, look at that.
See, I don't know if Gord is such a pro. I don't know if Gord will go there, but I have a feeling MJ on his color analysis will do a little, and there he's Fraser Minton, look at this, look at that, back of the net, bang.
I love it. Yeah. Can you believe it? This and that. Just add it right into it. I
Roof
need to
Daddy,
see it.
though. I can see Gord going Roof Daddy.
Roof Daddy is something that absolutely needs to be a part of hockey vernacular moving forward. So we'll play that 15 times today. All right, now it's been established. It's a part of the show now. We'll play that a lot. Even the sound after Roof Daddy is just
Roof Daddy.
There's 3 octaves, man. It's like the Mariah Carey Christmas album. It goes up 3 octaves.
It really is. It's really, really extreme. And it's borderline uncomfortable, but I love it. I love everything about it. So we'll play that all afternoon. More on a lot of hockey news throughout the day today. So we got Zach Werenski coming up with the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're in town tomorrow. Catch up with Zach. We got role play level of concern in about an hour of firing in the NHL today. More on that with Darren Dreger later this afternoon. The Raptors are back in action. Frankie Corrado's in here on Bryan Hayes. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
All right.
All right, Zach Werenski in about a half an hour. Role play level of concern later in the afternoon. It's getting really annoying, reading reports every day about what the Dodgers are still planning on doing. Like they're on a trade for Glass now. This Yamamoto, who is a Japanese pitcher that's coming over. He's 25, and by all accounts is an absolute stud, like
I'm sure
superstar
he is.
stud. And I guess he met with the Dodgers brass recently, and Shohei Ohtani was in the room, which has got to be the ultimate mic drop, right? Bringing a Japanese player over. It's one thing to be in L.A., Hollywood, all that. They're going to have the money for him. But Shohei's already doing the pitch. Freddie Freeman was in there. Mookie Betts was in there.
Think about the names you just said, man.
Yeah, it's gross.
Think about that.
Gross.
Think about who they already had, who they've brought in, and the pedigree of that team, and Dodger Stadium, everything that goes with that, the rich history. It's like if you got leverage and you're a star player and you're deciding where to play, how do you say no to that?
It's a good question. It's a very good question. I'm not sure that he will. I mean, it sounds like the New York teams are in on it too, which would be very compelling. Obviously, being a Yankee or being a Met. That's why you see reports, it's like the Jays are in on it, and it's just such a defeated feel after the Ohtani experience, where I can't help but be pessimistic. I'm like, they're not getting this guy. If the Dodgers are in and the Yankees and Mets, and they're going to pay him ridiculous amounts of money, like the Jays have the money. They could invest in him, but it's like you have a staff. Your staff is already elite. It was elite last year. So I don't have an issue with adding to it, but if you're going to do that, you might as well flip Manoah today. Like, what's the point of keeping Manoah around if you're going to invest, $250 million in Yamamoto?
It's probably the appropriate feeling to have about it, Hayes. And listen, I haven't been on the show in a little while, but I've seen everyone's kind of opinions on what the Americans think of Toronto as a baseball market. And listen, we have great fans. We have passionate fans. You come up here in the playoffs, you watch a Jays game. It's loud. It's obnoxious. It's passionate. It's great. It's all that kind of stuff. But you want to compete with baseball markets in the States, like the Dodgers, like the Yankees, like the Cubs. It's just the reality is, as much as we love Toronto and we're passionate about being from here, we're passionate about the Jays, we're just not in that conversation, man. And we're just not going to be. And the Jays will always be a team that has to build from within, make good trades, acquire players that can help you win, and hopefully you hit on some superstars that you kind of build from within along the way.
That's right. I mean, that's the case with the Blue Jays and with the Raptors, right? Like the Raptor fans, I think there's more self-awareness there. You're not competing with the Lakers in terms of brand and history and all. You're not doing it, and the Celtics and what they've represented forever. But that doesn't mean you're at the bottom tier or even close to it. Like the Raptors are incredibly valuable. They sell out all the time. They have money. They will spend money. They've got now their history continues to grow year over year over year. They've won a title. Blue Jays, similarly. Yes, you're not the Yankees. You're not the Sox. You're not the Dodgers. But you're also not. I'm not going to name
You're not
teams,
the Pirates.
but exactly.
You're not the Pirates. Like, you don't spend $60 million a year on your payroll. You don't have 3,000 fans in the stands, and you're not a team that every year is at the bottom of the standings. And you're also not a feeder system. You're really not. Like the Jays, like teams like that. It's like they'll bring someone in, they'll develop them, and then he's off to the Yankees, and it's like that's a feeder team within the MLB. The Jays aren't that. The Jays bring in players with name value. Yeah, it's not Ohtani. It's not Juan Soto, who you could have gotten a trade.
Could have acquired him. Yeah, they
could have acquired him for sure. But like, there's still name value to the players that have signed here. Kevin Gausman signed here. Right? Like, I understand the money was very good, but it's a Cy Young caliber pitcher. So it's just, there's a certain tier that the Jays are not going to acquire that player via free agency. That's a reality. But it's not like they're just picking up scraps.
No, that's a good point. Like the feeder system, because that will be challenged likely when Bo and Vladdy come up, depending on how they play and what they're worth at that point. Right? Like, if it's simply you got to pay to play, and those are your guys and they're willing to stay and they're worthy of that money, that'll be challenged to prove that you're not going to allow them to walk to some other market. But you're right, they don't have that history of doing it. Sure, there have been guys who have decided, you know what, I've peaked here, I can make a little bit more somewhere else over their history, and they've done that. But this is a team in the Blue Jays that have had MVPs. They've had Cy Young winners, right? They've won the World Series. They've been to multiple ALCS, the playoffs, etc. The Raptors have won their division. They've won a title. They've been to the East Final. They've had very good teams, very good players, coaches of the year multiple times. As you go on, your history goes, you keep moving up. But, yeah, the reality is you're the only Canadian team. You're dealing with a lot of American players, and even, non-Americans understand that in terms of marketing and ESPN and all that kind of stuff, it's in the States.
Yeah.
So you are dealing with somewhat of a disadvantage, but so be it. Don't allow it to defeat you. Just accept it and build around it and go and piss everyone off. If anything, I'd like to see the Jays take on a kind of we the North type attitude that was established when Wiki showed up with MLSE, when Masai showed up with the Raptors. Basically, instead of F Brooklyn, F everybody. You know what I mean? If you're the Jays, if the perception is, and I don't think it should be again, because Ohtani's one guy, he's a unicorn. He made $700 million, and he went to the Dodgers. He didn't go to the Twins. You know what I mean? He went to the Dodgers.
Dude,
he was
I was
already in LA.
Saturday night, I'm at Scotiabank Arena getting ready to work the game with Taddy, and I hear someone in that hallway, up top there where the media row is, someone's talking. They should plunk him. First at bat, they should plunk him.
Commentary.
And I stopped. I stopped in my tracks, and I didn't say anything, but I'm like, do you hear yourself right now?
Yeah.
How entitled do you sound that you think you should plunk this guy because he didn't sign with the Jays? What, he was supposed to? The fact that they were even in the conversation, that should be flattering to any Jays fan at that point.
Well, and that's a conversation that has started to percolate a little bit is, should the Jays have just not even tried so that you avoid the heartbreak, which to me is a ridiculous concept and such a loser's mentality.
Yeah.
That, if you knew in the end he probably wasn't going to come here, or did you just waste your time? Would have been easier for everybody if you just didn't even pitch, because then you don't get denied. But that's a horrible attitude and a horrible mentality.
That's
get
how
in
you
the
get
room.
no one.
Try it. Exactly. Then what are you even doing? The guy, it's Shohei Ohtani. He was a free agent. He was willing to accept your invitation. Or you were willing to accept his. He issued it. He sent you an invite. Come give me a call. Come sit down. I'll fly into Dunedin. I want to see what's up. Again, in the end, was he maybe always going to the Dodgers? Probably. Probably in the end. That seems now somewhat clear-cut. But in the moment, you can't know that. And no. Even if you kind of know it, who cares? Go in and put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
And guess what? Yes, you didn't sign the guy, but you also didn't lose anything. You didn't pay assets to get in the room. You didn't have to give up, prospects just to talk to the guy. It was your time. And now, you're going to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. I'm not surprised that they haven't just all of a sudden made all these moves, because you have to have confidence. You say what you want about Shapiro and Atkins, and everyone has a different view. I understand it. But Mark Shapiro's been in the game for 30 years. He's not going to panic. If he is, you got to get him out. The idea, if Atkins walked in or Shapiro the next day and said, we lost out on Ohtani, we're screwed, we got to do something, they should be fired on the spot.
Think about the sheer logistics, though, Hayes.
You can't do that. You can't operate that way.
No, you can't. And think about the sheer logistics of the time and effort that was put into trying to get Ohtani. It's not like you call the agent and say, yeah, we got $700 million. You want to take it or not? It's there's a lot that needs to happen here in order to make that deal actually feasible. And then, going through the whole courtship thing, bringing them into Dunedin. So now that...
And your owner's got to be involved too, right? You got to be in your owner's timeline too. That's delicate.
So that doesn't happen, and now, so you just go to Plan B and you pick up the phone and say, okay, I had 700 for him, but I got 300 million for you. No, that process needs to start again now, and whoever that's going to be, if it's Bellinger or whoever's out there, I know it's a weaker class of free agents, but that process has to start all over again, because if they had money, and here's what would be good if you're a player in that clubhouse, that they were willing to make a big splash and spend some money. That should be reassuring to you that the team is going to be focused on winning and trying to add pieces that help facilitate that.
Well, that is where they got to prove that, though, right?
Yeah.
That's the next step here. And we'll see what they bring to the table, but the offseason continues. Baseball's offseason can be very frustrating because there's no starting line, there's no drop dead date. Stuff just kind of slowly comes out, and at some point we assume a number of signings and transactions are going to happen. But at this point, again, the Jays have been pretty quiet. But Anyway, we'll see. With the Raptors in action tonight, there's been some wild stories in the NBA. We'll come back and play some post-game audio last night from guys who got ejected, massive, like major names in the NBA, and the responses to the ejections, very different, very, very different, but also the discussions revolving around the players, very, very different. We'll get into that and more. Raptors taking on Atlanta tonight downtown at Scotiabank, so we'll look ahead to that game as well. Frankie Corrado in studio. I'm Bryan Hayes. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, so the Raptors are back in action tonight. And last night in the NBA, we had a couple of wild scenes last night. And we've had discussions this week, Frankie, about booing people, right? Booing players. We were just talking about Shohei Ohtani. The idea that when he rolls through town, I believe at the end of April, the Dodgers are here, people are going to boo him, which, okay, go ahead. If you want to boo him. I don't think that's vicious. I don't think he'll lose sleep over that. Yeah. But I personally wouldn't be in a situation to boo a guy like that. But so be it. You make up your own rules. And then, earlier in the week, we were discussing John Tavares returning to Long Island. He got booed mercilessly. That's not going to stop. It's never going to come to an end. But last night, we saw a scene in Chicago that I don't recall ever seeing before, where the Bulls are awful. They are terrible. You're like, Zach LaVine's going to get flipped. Who knows what's going to happen with Lamar? They're in a really bad position, and the Bulls have been in a bad position really for quite some time, or it feels that way. But they had Denver in town last night, and obviously that's a West Coast team or a Western Conference team rolling through the East. The only time they're going to be in Chicago. So you get a chance to go see the great Jokic. Right, MVP, multiple MVP, Finals MVP, champion. I think most would concede the most dominant player in the NBA today, a guy that you want to buy tickets to go see. He got kicked out of the game last night. I think it was in the second quarter, and the fans were booing that he got kicked out, which I find hysterical because that's a sign of how bad your team is, right? Because if you got a good team, you're like, this is great. Jokic is out. We're going to win. This is a good position for us. But the Bulls are so bad, and Jokic is so great that when he got ejected last night, fans are like, what the hell's this? Don't kick that guy out. Kick one of our players out. Let him keep playing. I love that. Who are you
going to watch? You're going to watch him.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about it all the time. There's certain players that are coming to your town once or twice a year, and they're appointment viewing guys. That's the guy. Why are you spending $150 on tickets? That's the guy you want to see, especially if your team's not any good. So I like that, man. I think
I appreciate it too.
Paid good, hard-earned money, and I've probably had this game on the books for weeks or months, and you're kicking this guy out? It didn't sound like he thought he should be kicked out. Well, he probably shouldn't have.
No, it sounds like he made a comment, and then the ref was just quick and booted him and got him out of there, which is ridiculous. But that ref, I have a feeling he won't have Serbia circled on the map anytime soon to travel to and check out, because listen to this commentary from Jokic after the game. This is what he had to say about getting tossed last night in Chicago.
It is what it is. I'm just happy that we didn't play in Serbia this game. It's going to be really fun to see how it will be ended. So it was interesting. It is what it is. Some guys can say whatever. I think sometimes what I said is not even a technical. So it is what it is.
What is he driving at?
You know what he's driving at? There's a guy who unbuttons his shirt just a little this, and he's got the gold chain. And his name is Francosh or something.
Yeah.
And he takes care of business after the game.
Right. If Jokic gets tossed, he and his brothers are waiting for the ref outside.
Now, was it Serbian Heritage Night or something like that? Why did he make mention of Serbia in that moment?
I found that strange. Was it, JP? Go ahead, speak.
Yeah, it was Serbian Heritage Night for Chicago.
Okay.
And everyone pointed that out as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense as to why he's like, that was in Serbia, man.
Well, that makes it even more outrageous that they would kick him out for something that's not so obvious to everyone watching in the stands.
Exactly. And even further, drives home the point of the fans being like, what the hell do you think we're doing here? We're not here to watch the Bulls, right? We're here to watch the Serbian prince himself. So he gets tossed last night. And again, I wonder, though, I'd love to know what he said, because he did say he doesn't think what he said would have been a technical on a lot of – he's definitely yelling at the guy.
Yeah.
But, a technical for the MVP, best player in the league.
Guys
again,
are
against
always
the
yelling,
Bulls.
though, Hayes. Like,
Guys
guys
are
are
always
always,
yelling.
they always have something to say. Like, no one ever agrees with the referee when he makes a call. It's
Right.
It's every sport.
Everyone's yelling all the time. So anyway, we had that last night, and then you had Draymond Green, who, I don't even know what to make of this guy anymore. Like what he pulls on Nurkic last night was like his acting is so awful.
It's terrible.
His explanations are terrible. After the game, he apologized, and he said, the only reason I apologized is because I didn't mean to do it. If I meant to do it, I wouldn't apologize.
He did mean to do it, though. Like,
Of course he did.
It's ridiculous. Of course he meant to do it. It's the worst acting sell job I've ever seen in a sporting event. Like, it just looks like he turns around and suckers the guy.
Yeah, it's a punch to the head. Like, it's an open hand, but like there's no basketball move there. The idea, I didn't mean to. It's like, Draymond, what do you think you're doing?
It's
like,
so greasy and
it's
gutless.
so greasy. It's gutless. He's a human screen right now. He's not getting up to shoot the ball. The guy doesn't. Offense does not run through Draymond. It has not for years, if ever, for that matter, on that team. And this is going to be the second suspension in like a month. He went after Rudy Gobert a month ago or whatever it was. Got suspended for that. Now it's Nurkic here. I have to believe he's going to get double-digit games.
He should.
The guy is just becoming like he's a caricature of himself.
Yeah.
And it's almost sad to see. Like he's had such a great career. That team's been so great. Clay's getting benched. He's getting suspended. They're going up in flames.
No, it's gutless. It's greasy. It's a loser move. You know what's not a loser move? On the other side, let's take a listen to Joe from the Bridge with the mashup Bedard goal. Look at this. Look at that.
Okay, I love it. We will get to that in the next hour. We have Zach Werenski coming up. We've got Kylie McDaniel of ESPN on what's up with the Jays moving forward, role play level of concern. Frankie Corrado's in here. I'm Bryan Hayes. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.